Hi, this is a setup for test running a 1945 Cadillac V8 flathead hooked up to a 1945 GM Hydra-matic transmission. This came out of a M24 Chaffee tank, which is powered by two of these engines and transmissions. There's the other transmission over there. The other engine's being worked on. We wanted the work was done on the transmissions. Both transmissions were rebuilt, so I wanted to test that the transmissions were working, were shifting, and also not leaking before I put them back in the tank. So right now it's sitting on 4 temporary legs, you can see there. I'll show you where it normally. This is the Chaffee tank sitting in the museum, the Ontario Regiment Museum in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada. As I say, we've got both engines out because of transmission problems. I'll take you around the back and show you where the engines and transmissions mount. The engines are mounted in the rear of the tank, with the engines to the rear and the transmissions in front of them. This is the engine compartment. You can see at the front there, at the bulkhead, the transfer case where the output from the transmissions, the 2 output shafts from the transmissions, feed into the transfer case. And just in front of that, the blocks with the round holes in the middle are the transmission mounts. And down below are the 4 engine mounts. The trannies have no reverse gear. The reverse gear is actually in the transfer case, you can see there. This is the temporary fuel supply. It's a bottle that can be pressurized with air, and it is actually hooked up to a regulator using shop air set to 2.5 psi, which is the electric fuel pump output pressure on the tank. And then you can see from the bottom of the bottle, you can see the line coming up to the fuel filter and into the carburetor here. I have set up, I've got a timing light hooked up to one of the spark plug leads, which gives me engine speed. I have a laser tachometer, which is rigged there, as you can see, just to save us having to hold it. And it's looking at the reflective tab on the output shaft of the transmission, so it's giving me the output shaft speed. We've got a rad from a car, temporarily set up for cooling, obviously. You can see the inlet to the rad, the bigger hose at the bottom, coming from the main pipe on the engine, main coolant pipe on the engine. And you can see the 2 coolant outlets from the heads coming up through this horn type arrangement, normally going into a large cooler mounted on a rad mounted on top of the engine, but we've rerouted it into the temporary rad. On the other side of the engine, we've got the power supply. This is a 24-volt system because it's military. You can see the 2 batteries jumpered together to give 24 volts. The negative running up to ground on the engine, and the positive running directly to the starter main battery post. I have ignition, temporary ignition from the battery, the red wire up to the coil. And I also have, this is my emergency shut-off. This piece of rope here runs to the back of the engine, so if something catches fire or falls over, we can shut the engine off, hopefully. So far it hasn't happened. We have run the engine. And I have the one of these neat starter bypass switches, which you can just hook up with crocodile clips onto the solenoid, and it'll crank the engine over when you press the button. So I've got the fuel pressure set to 2.5 psi, pressurizing the bottle. I've got the timing light switched on, it's hooked up to one of the 12-volt batteries, and I've got the tach switched on, laser tach. So the carburetors in these Chafees, I think, were unusual. They have an automatic choke, which is operated by the bimetallic coil in here, which is common later, but it's the earliest version of an automatic choke I've seen. So right now the engine's cold. You can see the choke's fully closed. I'm going to try cranking it now, see if she'll fire. She runs, the choke's a bit slow coming off, maybe because the bimetallic coils, it could be 70 odd years old. So anyway, here goes. We've got an old muffler on there just to keep the noise down a bit. She starts really well and runs really well, this engine. I'm going to let it warm up a bit and get that choke off a bit, and then I'll show you the transmission shifting, which is the main reason for the testing. So she's idling around 500 RPM there. The tranny's in neutral, and the output shaft's turning, because there's no load on it, the output shaft isn't stalled out. There's enough drag in the fluid coupling and the clutches and the bands to spin the output shaft. I can stop it with a piece of wooden dowel, but it takes a fair bit of force. You can see the tach's reading about 240 RPM. If I switch the engine into drive, which I do with this clicking this lever backwards and forwards, you can see the output shaft slow down to about 136 RPM. That's it in first gear. So it's actually locked up in gear now. So it's still, I could still stall it because the fluid coupling isn't anywhere close. The fluid coupling is slipping at such a low RPM, and I could actually stop the output shaft with a piece of wood. Now, I've got the engine RPM on the timing light set up on the left meter there. Tranny output shaft RPM on the right. I'm going to raise the RPM, and you'll see that I think it's about 2600 RPM on the engine, and about 680 on the output shaft, which is because of the gear ratio of 3.92 to 1 in first gear. When the output shaft reaches 680, you'll hear the engine hesitate a bit. It's actually as the shift occurs. It doesn't drop in RPM, there's no load, but you'll see the output shaft RPM increase, jump up from 680. Okay, here goes. I hope you heard that. You can hear a slight the engine hesitates. I guess there's a little bit of drag as the clutches and bands release and apply, just enough to load the engine up slightly and make it hesitate. Let me show that again. So left hand meter 2600 roughly 2600 RPM. Engine speed right hand meter roughly 680. And if you look back at that, you could actually hear another shift occur, which is the 2-3 shift, and then the 3-4 shift actually occurs immediately after the 2-3 shift. But if you notice, if you look at the just before I let the gas off, the output RPM and the engine RPM were the same, around about 3600, something like that, which is about the red line for this engine. And that's because it's in fourth gear and you're a 1-to-1 gear ratio, so engine speed and transmission output shaft speed are the same. So what we've shown here is we've convinced ourselves that the tranny is shifting properly. We've done it at full load and no load, and you can fake the tranny into thinking it's at full load by removing this vacuum connection here, and thinks that the intake manifold vacuum is very low and therefore you're under maximum load. So that worked well. We've no leaks, and there's a lot of places these old trannies can leak, and we're good to go. We'll put this engine and transmission back in the tank. Thank you for watching.